Welcome back to the Power Forward podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Rainica, a mindset coach and former Ivy League athlete here to help student athletes, parents, and coaches focus on progress, not perfection. Every other week, we'll welcome a new guest with relevant experience to share their perspectives and tools to support growth on and off the field. We are in the presence of British royalty today, folks. Our guest is one of Britain's most decorated rowers, a two-time Olympic medalist and the Great Britain record holder for the fastest ever 2-kilometer erg time of 5:39. He won bronze at Tokyo and silver at Paris in the men's pair alongside Ollie Wynne-Griffith, studied politics at Princeton, completed a master's at Cambridge, and is now navigating life after elite sport. Tom George, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
From all the way across the pond. So let's dive in. I'm assuming most of our listeners grew up in the U.S. Can you describe what playing sports was like during your childhood in Great Britain?
Yeah. I guess honestly very similar, I would say, to what a lot of people in the US go through in terms of like sports through school or sports through clubs. And I was very lucky that the school I went to had a lot of sports on offer, and so I was able to sort of try lots of different things and work out where I wanted to sort of focus my attention and time. Built into the sort of school system in the UK is extensive fixture list and the opportunity to compete as well as train. And so being able to tap into that, like I remember when I was sort of really young, and it was like every week in the summer there was like athletics competitions, like track and field, and in the winter like a rugby game every Saturday, maybe Wednesday and Saturday sometimes. And you spend a lot of time, like sport was very much like a focus of education and a big part of it, and so I was really lucky to be able to have that.
So it sounds like you played rugby and track and field.
Yeah, those were like my two main sort of initial things. Bit of football, or
Soccer.
soccer. Yeah, soccer.
Real
Yeah, exactly.
Real football.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I actually say soccer to Kat, and she's like, "You can call it football. That's okay." Yeah.
Kat, previous guest, is also my friend Tom's wife, who also played professional sports, but field hockey at Princeton, and that's how they met. But back to your childhood, when did you get introduced to rowing?
I was probably like 14, 15, and it was an option at school, and I was able to do it as a sport for a couple of the terms. And I remember my whole life was always like rugby was kind of the focus, and then the other things were still like fun but sort of like less sort of focused in terms of like how I approached it. And had that sort of moment where I remember being like, okay, I'll do rowing because if I play rugby, then I can row in the like other two terms. That'll make me fit and strong, and I'll keep getting like fitter, and that should complement it. And then I sort of progress quicker. And so I really wanted to always remember being like, rugby's my priority, like try really hard, like want to be good at it. I'm a competitive person. Like when I was rowing, I'd always row as hard as I could and everything like that. But I would probably be just doing like less of the like extra stuff and less of the like, strength and conditioning bits to go alongside it. And then that sort of graph runs together, and they just sort of intersected at a certain point where it was like, right, I'm trying as hard as I can at rugby, and I'm just like not good enough, and never was going to be good enough to be like in the sort of professional sort of sphere. Like maybe, I played to a good level at school and I really enjoyed it, but it was one of those, you're never going to kick on. Like meanwhile, I was doing like junior national team stuff in rowing, talking to places like Princeton, and having that opportunity to like explore becoming really good at that. I remember having that moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to explore pursuing rowing more. When I did the junior national team stuff, I think it was something like, wow, you're on a pathway here. And I was talking to Princeton and Harvard and Yale and Brown and Washington, whatever. And suddenly like, wow, people really want to invest in you and invest in your career as well. And so I was like, it was sort of like a sort of, I guess, kind of a binary moment. I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm better at. That's the priority now.
Mm. At what point did you have to decide? Was it more so like, okay, these colleges are interested in me, or was it, I'm better at this?
It was probably more, I'm better at this. I actually was very lucky that the school I was at were happy for me to like continue to play rugby alongside rowing the whole way through. So through high school, I always did like rugby in the like fall, and then would row in the spring and the summer. And so being able to do that, I was very lucky that I was able to do that, because other schools and like peers alongside me, they were made to choose at sort of like 16. They probably decided, whilst I was able to, like the first time I started doing like singularly rowing was actually when I got to Princeton.
I know it's much different in Europe, but in the States, kids are starting to specialize earlier and they're getting really intense training early
Yeah.
on in life. And we're seeing more injuries, especially with girls.
Yeah.
And there are different philosophies, and some coaches want their players to play all year round, or they just want to focus on one sport.
Yeah.
I'm more of the let's try all different sports, let's build different muscles,
Yeah.
let's get experience to different things because they all kind of cross over.
Yeah.
Do you think that had anything to do with how good you became at rowing because you didn't necessarily
Uh,
specialize in it from the start?
Probably yes, in terms of like being able to enjoy sports and just like the
Yeah.
enjoyment factor as much as anything, of being able to go out there and like, oh, it's a bit different, but I really want to be this, and I'll play as hard as I can at this point in time, and then I'll do a different sport and I'll play as hard as I can at that. So I think, yeah, I think it's important not to just like silo yourself, especially because you might have a moment where you're suddenly like, wait, I picked the wrong sport, or like, why am I doing this? Or I'm not as good as I hope to be. And so that's like a really scary place to be, I think, when you're like a young kid and you probably aren't getting as much enjoyment out of it. Like, I think you want to make it feel like a job as little as possible. And if you start to specialize too early, that's the way it will be.
Mm.
There's people are starting to specialize a lot earlier here as well, especially in rowing. I think that the opportunity to go to the States actually has really meant that schools want to specialize a lot earlier. They want to help those kids get into those schools, and they want to be able to provide them with the best sort of foundation for that. And so I don't think that's necessarily unique to the States. The element and the opportunities to like go to those schools, it does make it sort of a little bit of a race to the bottom in terms of being like, right, how do we make sure that we're giving those kids the best opportunities? And maybe that serves them quite well for going to an Ivy League school or getting into a good college, but I'm not sure necessarily how well that will, if they're looking to pursue it beyond school. You know, you get to that point where you're just like, I'm just tired. All I've done is this. And it's like, I've been hammered and hammered. And yeah,
Mm.
there's sort of a balance to be had.
There
Yeah.
must be a lot of pressure. You're going to pursue rowing because it's going to get you to a school at the States. Did
Yeah.
you ever feel that with any sort of sport?
I never really felt like I was being pushed specifically into one sport just for that. I think the States wasn't really on my radar that early on. And so as a result, I think I was sort of just always played sports for the love of playing sports and was able to, they sort of ran well in parallel with my academics and like school. Yeah, I never necessarily felt like it was just to get into school. But at the same time, like I do see it now, and you like talk to people and they're like, well, yeah, but I need to get this, be better at rowing for like this, so I want to go to this school or do that. And sometimes I just think you like maybe focusing on the wrong thing, and you've like missed the point of what it means at that sort of age. Like the cream will always rise to the top to some extent as well. So yeah, if the good kid, like if you're a good athlete, which a lot of these kids are, you should just be like enjoying a holistic approach to sports with the opportunity to then be able to um, specialize when the time is right. But it's not going to hinder you to do other sports. You might be slightly further behind on that like progression curve, but you'll catch up really quickly if you've done other sports at the same time.
Yeah. Also with the awareness that I mean, some kids first generation or they're coming
Mm.
from,
Oh
a
yeah.
less privileged, like I need
Mm.
to perform at a high level to get into college or to get a scholarship.
Yeah.
So like you and me, lucky, but I think there is just so much pressure around it. And I'm curious what your parents were like through the
Mm.
process.
My parents were so hands off, I think, the whole time. They were just like, which was really nice, but it was always just like, we'll always support this. Like, if you want to do this, if we need to get up at this time in the morning or we need to be there late at night, we'll always do it. And we'll pick you up, drop you off, whatever's needed. But they were never like, you have to do this. It was always like, if you want to do this, let's do it. And I think that was really
Mm,
nice and refreshing. I think, yeah, it does terrify me when I like see parents who are sort of like forcing kids into doing stuff. And yeah, you like look at that and I always think like, sort of why? Like, what's the if you just run the numbers even, right, it's like your chances that your kid's the next Tom Brady are probably pretty small. And so like making them behave like they are when they're like 9, 10, 11, 12, it's just never really the play. Even up to like 15, 16, 17, it's like people grow at different speeds, people mature at different speeds. And so there are like huge variables there that mean that actually until everything sort of shakes out through college, you don't really know.
Mm,
Just, yeah, being like super forceful and like pushing your kids to like do so. I just for me, I just don't think that's the right approach. I think you're way better off just like managing the individual and the person than you are like trying to stamp them into doing something. Maybe I don't know. People always say right that it's like people do it to because they want to like live vicariously through their kids for their own like sporting shortcomings or whatever it is. And maybe that's the case. I don't really know what the motivations are sometimes, but like, and I get it because like there's college involved now and things like that. And it's like, can I get a scholarship? Can I get my son into this or daughter into that?
mm,
And so, yeah, I guess there are pressures there. And you ultimately like always want the best for them. And I understand it's coming from a like place of love and it's, but I think you're far better off if you kind of let them drive it because
mm.
being good at sports, I mean, I presume I'm not going to swear on this, but it's like really, really hard, right? It's really, really, really effing hard to be like good at sports and to be like at an elite level. And that elite level kind of starts at college level, right? Like D1 athletics onwards. And so like you have to really want to do it because if you don't, or if there's any like inkling of like, you know, yeah, I want to do this, but like, kind of like this, my dad or my mum or whoever wants me to kind of do it more. You just like fall down when the pressure comes on because you have that moment where you're like, actually, I'm not really willing. I don't want to dig in here. And so
Mm.
that would be my take at least. I don't know. I don't have kids yet.
I agree.
I don't have like
Yeah.
a approach to it. So, but like I always like look at it like that. And I always think about like my parents. And there was never like you have to get up and go train. It was always like
Right.
I'd just be like, I'm gonna go train. You're like, cool, great. Let us know if we can help. If we can't, just crack on. Yeah.
I
So
love
that was
that.
really nice. Yeah.
If only life could be that simple.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in your relationship with your pair's partner, Ollie.
No, yeah, Ollie,
When
yeah.
did you grow up together? When did you start rowing together?
Yeah. We actually went to high school together. So he was the year above me actually. So we first rode together in 2011. And we did a couple of years together at school. And then he went to Yale and I went to Princeton and we did raced against each other a lot. He was considerably more successful than I was through college. So which was cool. They've had a great program there. We were always trying to catch him. Never quite managed to. And then in 2018 and graduated, came back to the national team, and then we were in the 8 together that went to Tokyo. Actually lived together as well for a bit, for like 2 years. Was it 2 years? Maybe a year and a half, but obviously COVID was in the middle of there. And then both went to Cambridge actually. He was in the MBA. I was doing real estate finance, and that's when he swapped sides actually. We were on the same side, like in rowing. You have one oar, so you had to pick a side at some point, and
Mm.
we actually were on the same side for all the way up to the point of going to Cambridge. And then this like quite cool
Oh,
moment in Cambridge where got the two of us there, and Rob, the coach, was like, I need one of you to swap sides for the boat race. And then was kind of like, but I think actually, and he pulled up a load of data and like you can sort of look at power curves through special like technology. And he was like looking at that and like overlaying it. And he was like, I actually think this would make like a really cool pair if we like overlay this together and could be quite an
wow.
exciting opportunity for you guys. I basically was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not swapping sides, And
Really?
yeah, and Ollie was like, okay, I'll do it, and just like put his hand up straight away. Whilst I was kind of like, I don't know if my hips will handle it, like my body, I don't really know how the body will feel this. Whilst like, and it did make sense. I think it made sense. I think there was sort of more of an underlying bit to it. It was just like quite funny in that moment. Ollie was always like, other physios had always been like, you should maybe be rowing on the other side with the way your body composition is and like leg lengths and things like that. And so
Hmm.
um, it went well. And I remember it being like the second session we did in the pair. And he'd been rowing in like bigger boats for a bit, like an 8 and a 4, and trying that side out. And do remember the second session in the pair, and bits of it were like pretty ropey because obviously it was like trying to figure it out. But like there were just like points where suddenly the boat would just like run on really well and really straight, and I was like, it's kind of better than a lot of pairs I've been in before. And this is like his second time doing it. So yeah, and that was pretty cool. And so then that kind of forged the doing the pair. And we went back into the national team out at Cambridge and were able to keep it going. Yeah. Sadly,
Wow.
we weren't able to keep working with Rob, but we had to figure that out. And I think he helped us out a lot, but from afar. So that was cool.
And I mean, he was the best man in your wedding.
Yeah.
In team sports, we spend a lot of time with our teammates,
Yeah.
but I can imagine in a pair, it's even more time and it's even more, one-on-one intimate. Can you speak to that trust and what
Yeah,
was the key to a success there?
yeah, yeah. You spend a lot of time together. Share hotel rooms all the time whenever you're traveling, like, so definitely at points it's a bit of a pressure cooker in terms of just like time spent together but yeah, I guess the trust piece is massive because of for that reason, right? You need to be able to understand each other really well. And like it got to the point where honestly it was like you could like, read each other super well and you'd be like, okay, like, all he kind of needs an hour by himself right now, so I'll just like go read a book in like outside somewhere or like whatever in these hotels, and give him like an hour to like by himself, or like the same would go the other way, and he'd just like disappear, or and you just like, oh, okay, and you get very good and sort of adept at those sort of touch points where you can like read each other's body language, because obviously I like you'd never say, well, okay, you can say, you can be like, but you're hopefully never going to have a point where it like blows up to the point of it being like I don't want to see, you can't see each other, you need to, so it's like being able to, manage each other and read each other to be able to, get the, like, you have to be able to get the best out of each other. And so at any given point in time, especially in a pair, right? Like I said, we have one
Right.
rule each. So you're like exactly 50% of the boat. You need to make it go straight. I think just being able to know, like every time I sat on the start line, it was always like, I know 1000% that he has my back and he's like sitting behind me. And that's just, it's pretty unique, obviously, but pretty cool. And I think the best pairs that you see in rowing, I guess that's a rowing example, but kind of all have that. And I think like the same with the best teams, Jordan's Bulls and seeing that in the last dance, and you like look at the fact that like, okay, they might not actually have got on like the best, been like best mates, like Ollie and I were, and so but they 100% trusted each other to carry out that role at any given point in time,
Mm,
especially when it mattered. I think that's the key piece, like when it really really mattered, and so yeah, it's pretty special to be able to like have those relationships.
mm. I can imagine too, you understood what was going on in each other's brains pretty often when you're in the boat too.
Yeah.
Did you ever work with a sports psychologist, or what kind of tools did you use or learn to use
Mm,
on the mental side of it?
yeah, we had a guy with the team for the last year we were there called Jeff, who was really, really good. But he kind of worked with us individually, to be honest with you. We didn't do that much together. We did a couple of things together. Being in the boat is actually like the easy part kind of thing, because you're on your own. It's just you guys. You're out in the water. Like it all becomes very simple. I think the harder part, the sort of bits around it and managing, sometimes he might be really happy with something and I might be really unhappy with it, or vice versa. And how do you sort of meet in the middle and um, discuss those things and be sort of empathetic to each other's viewpoints, because otherwise you'd like never able to grow. You kind of have to be together to move forward. And so read each other's mind piece is it's something that, yeah, I guess now you say it, it's like, yeah, definitely. And we were definitely able to do that. But I don't know necessarily like when that came in. I think honestly, that was just like repetitions of strokes at different points in time, understanding how we wanted the boat to feel at any point in time, understanding how we wanted to race and how we wanted to like, win when we won was really important. And I remember one time we had a race in Lucerne in Switzerland, and like we lost the semi-final by a foot or like 2 feet or something. And then we
Mm,
won the final by 2 feet. And I remember Ollie actually said it at the time. We were sort of like, one was not a good race and one was a great race, sort of thing. And then we had that moment where it was like, well, hang on, actually, like the difference of 4 feet probably isn't enough to be like, that's a bad race and that's a good race, a really good race. So you have to
mm,
like remove the emotion from that, right? And be like, cool, like look at it objectively, because obviously you feel great when you win and you get like a medal and you're on a podium and that's really fun. But what was that like? What was the difference in those actual difference in those 4 feet, rather than just like what your emotions? Something that probably took us a bit of time to figure out, but actually was very cool once we had. Yeah, but we didn't work too much with a like sports psychologist like together. Actually, interestingly, I think we're both pretty level-headed people, so it was just being able to do exactly that and kind of like, have you read the Inner Game of Tennis? Have you read the Inner Game of Tennis? This book.
uh,
Uh,
by Agassi?
no, it's by a
No,
guy called
it's
uh,
called The Game of Tennis.
the Inner Game of Tennis. Yeah,
No,
it's like by this
I
guy
guess I
called
gotta read it.
W. Timothy Galloway. It's pretty interesting. But the whole concept is that like basically uh, don't overthink things. And like when you're playing tennis, the ball gets hit towards you. You're not standing there being like, cool, now it's coming towards me and I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to swing back and I'm going to put topspin on it. And because if you overthink it like that, inevitably you mishit it. It's all about like,
Right.
kind of like that point in the moment. And then there's a great bit in it where it's like, if you're losing in tennis and someone's like serving really well or their forehand's really good, you should be like, hey, I really like what you're doing with your forehand. Can you tell me what you're thinking about when you do it? And then inevitably they will start to play worse because they start thinking about it to like share that with you. And so it's like that idea of like, it's almost like the flow state piece, but like the idea that you need to be able to like almost remove yourself and be like, okay, objectively speaking, how does this look and what am I doing versus overthinking everything and going down a rabbit hole and then you're sort of not getting better because you're trying to fix everything at once. Yeah, in that book, he talks a little bit about sort of almost literally like removing yourself. So you'll be like rowing along, and in my case, or, in basketball, you're like shooting threes. And you sort of like take yourself out and look, and as if you're like watching from like a third party, like position. You're like, okay, how is that? Like, what am I doing there that's good? And now obviously you can do like video analysis. It makes it way easier, right? And you can like sort of add that layer in. But I think that was like that's just a big part of rowing. I think you don't overthink it a lot of the time. Like there will be times where we'd row around a lake and we'd just chat about random stuff because the rowing part's kind of ingrained and you're just like, you're not overthinking it. You're just sort of flowing through it. Yeah. And I think that sort of brings you together quite well.
I mean, it sounds like you did do a lot of reading and understanding your brain and how it was working. I mean, you had to have just through practice kind of build those skills. Yeah. And same thing with any sport. It's like basketball too. If you get in your head and you start overthinking things, then you're going to start missing and making mistakes. You kind of just have to play. And the more repetition, the more confidence you build. Yeah. And the more it becomes second nature.
Exactly.
Now, talk to us about, if you're comfortable, your race in Paris.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you processed it? What was it like processing it? And what did you learn about yourself?
It was a good race. We had a good race. We put ourselves out there to win the race. Probably like should have won the race or could have won the race. And I think that's what we put ourselves in a position to win the race. Then, as fatigue comes in, like mistakes get made. And that's probably like where the one piece of it that you're like, okay, how would I do that differently? Maybe, but at the same time, like we had a good race. We had we put ourselves in a position to win the Olympics. Didn't quite work out like that. So like, that's the nature of sports and that's the way it goes. Right.
Who was the team that inched out at the end?
Croatia.
So it really looked like Tom and Ollie were going to win. They were well ahead and Croatia kind of kicked up the gear, came from behind and just squeezed out the win. But yeah. I'm wondering too, like, I'm thinking of, and this is more my experience, like soccer, you miss a penalty kick and your team loses. Basketball, you miss the last free throw and your team loses. Positions like that where, young kids might be, and granted, this is the Olympic stage and that's times a million, but in your world as a young student athlete, that feels like the end of the world.
Yeah.
What was your feeling after and how were you able to move on with your life? And now you're, you have a big boy job in the real world, but like, how do you move past that?
I guess like time heals all wounds to some extent. So there's a big part of it. It's just that, and being able to like look to the positives from like your life and your career and what you were able to do and what you were able to achieve. And I think those things are all like, you look through that and you look through like Ollie and I rowing together and you go through all of the like parts of that journey and just sort of realize that kind of, I mean, it's a real cliche, isn't it? But it's kind of never about the destination. So, and like, obviously it would have been really cool to win the Olympics.
But you won a silver. That's like, not many people can say that. Like, that's incredible.
Of course.
But I can imagine it's like, oh, you just had it. And yeah.
And I think the bit that like hurts obviously is like when you make mistakes and that costs you. But like, if you miss a penalty kick, keeper's also allowed to try and save the penalty kick, right? So, sometimes you just get matched in that moment. There's that Roger Federer speech that he gives and he's like, I won all these championships, but I actually won like 54% of the points I played or something like that, right? Yeah. So like, it's the way sports works and it's the way that you've got to be able to like compartmentalize those things and be able to not sit there. You don't want to sit there and be like, they don't define you as a person. So it's just sort of stupid to dwell on them, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Like, obviously I understand it's emotional, and I understand, like, I've made that sound really simple, and I understand that if you're a young kid and you're a student athlete, that's like really hard, but that's like part of life, really, and part of
Mm,
the way, and you learn a lot more probably about yourself when you go through those situations than if you just win all the time, right?
mm.
Yeah.
No, I think it's helpful to hear from someone like you to be able
Yeah.
to um, kind of put that to the side and look back and be proud of what you accomplished together.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
and looking back too, what kind of helped you get through the hard days? I mean, rowing is
Yeah.
grueling. You're waking up early. Like just I don't know. To me, it seems a little boring just rowing on the erg all day.
It's basically like all about what you want to achieve, I think, was how I sort of started to frame it. And I think about it a lot,
Mm,
and I think about it now in like as you say, like the big boy job. And the hard days are going to come. There are going to be loads of hard days, and you have to decide how you want to deal with them. And ultimately, the hard days really help you to have good days. And so you need to be able to, and there'll be days when you don't feel good, or there'll be days where like coach has a go at you, whether you feel like it's unfair or fair. And there'll be days where you're just like not up for it. But kind of like you have to just keep turning up on those days to some extent. That's the first step. And then the second step is to actually like work out a mindset, which means that you're able to like push through those and be like, no, actually, like this will be a good day still, or this will be. And obviously, there'll be days where you're injured or you're sick and you actually like physically can't train or shouldn't train or whatever. But yeah, I basically just, I remember thinking about it a lot in lockdown, when like lockdown was pretty hard, obviously, because it was like we was 4 months from the Olympics, and then suddenly it was like, no, you're not. You're now 16 months from the Olympics. But actually, when they
mm,
first delayed it, it wasn't even that. It was like, actually, we don't know if the Olympics is going to happen. You're just going to go home and train, but it's definitely not happening this year. We'll just see what happens with
mm.
that. And I remember like sitting there, and you have that moment where you're like, right, so I can either be like, it's all sad and it's hard, and which it was, but or it's like, right, how can I be the best version of what I can be? And I got quite into that idea of being like, what's the best that I can do at this point in time? So like, I'd be on the erg and be like, what's the best I can do for this erg? And then I rode my bike loads, right, and that gave me like a load of freedom, like mental clarity, whatever, to be able to just like, I'd go ride for like 5 hours in the morning.
And
And
that's when you got that world record, right?
the British record, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Well, you broke the world record there too.
yeah, that was at Cambridge though. That was like a bit later.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and so but I remember being like, okay, so what gets you through the hard days is actually like the the same thing that will help you win. Essentially, is like
Mm,
your approach to it of being like, okay, just want to be the best that I can be, and therefore, like, there'll be days when I don't fancy this or I don't really feel like it, but at the same time, what would a winner do, right? They would go out there and they'd train really well and they'd like put their best foot forward.
mm,
Um, and I understand like that's like quite a weird like mindset to work on, because that super rational approach to thinking. And like, I understand that people not like that probably took a bit of time to come to that sort of thought
mm.
process of just always being like, what's the best? And I think that carries through now. It's just like, a little bit like, when the days are good, don't let them, like, don't push yourself. Like, don't be like, this is the best thing in the world and be like all up here, because, but at the same time, when it's really hard and you don't want to like deviate. So it's like, just reduce your standard deviation to be like, emotionally, that's emotionally. Like, obviously, you want to have like epic physical days, like where you're going to go win or whatever. But
Right.
yeah, and it's like if you can narrow that, you have this like nice like clarity of like rational thought where you're able to be like, okay, that's
Yeah.
what I want to do. Yeah,
That's awesome.
that was always my take on it anyway. It's like, yeah, don't jump too
Yeah.
high, or don't fall
No,
too
I
low.
agree. Yeah,
Um,
like you said, a lot easier said than done. But if
yeah,
you
of
think of
course.
it that way, where it's like always going to be kind of like a scale, but as much as you can
Yeah.
get it level. What's next? What are you up
Uh,
to?
I don't know. We'll see. I'm running the London Marathon in a couple of weeks' time. So's
Yeah.
Cat. So's Cat. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually doing High Rocks, New York on the 5th of
Oh, you
June.
are?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay,
Yeah.
you're gonna win that. Can't wait to
Mm,
watch.
not sure about that, but it's gonna be fun. I'm actually really excited to do it. It's just a bit different, isn't it? And then we'll see. I
Yeah.
haven't really decided like fully what's next in terms of like sporting opportunities. Could be quite fun to take on some other challenges. Quite enjoying, honestly, like a bit of sort of the big boy job and the big boy lifestyle, because um like it's quite nice to be able to like take holiday and like be able to have a bit of freedom. Obviously, yeah, I was incredibly lucky and I lived an epic lifestyle and I had a great time like rowing and being a professional athlete. It's quite nice sometimes to be able to have a weekend, and Friday nights are quite fun. But I always used to train Saturday mornings, so never like used to get that. And so quite yeah, it's I'm enjoying like this different sort of chapter at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we are all so lucky to hear from you. Thank you very much for your insights. And I think just listening to an Olympian share what it takes mindset wise, and not that it's simple, but you have simplified it and told us in a way that, feels like, okay, if I think this way, if I practice this way, maybe I can compete at the highest level too. So it's very inspiring.
I think that's like the key message is that like I don't know, you need to do like the ordinary stuff really well first and
Right.
foremost, and then you can like be extraordinary later. But so just take
Right.
care of those things first. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can listeners find you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok. I'm on Instagram as Tom George 1994. I guess you can LinkedIn me if you really want as well. That's like the modern game seems to be a lot in the LinkedIn game. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, welcome to our world.
yeah, exactly. And then I guess like um, you work with a lot of young people, Jackie. So if there's
Yeah.
anyone that you think you need to like, you would want to send my way, then I'm happy to talk to people and to like help them out. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me or Tom, and
yeah,
let's do
yeah,
this.
yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Excited
Jackie.
to see you soon. Thank
Yeah, talk
you.
to you later. Thank you.
Bye.